Welcome on inside yet another edition of the Business of Social podcast powered by STN Digital. I'm your host, David Brickley, as always, joined by producer Will. Producer Will, how we feeling?
Feeling good.
We're coming. All right. We're coming. You're like, I don't know what else I got to say here. We're coming at you hot and heavy, obviously, during these unprecedented COVID-19 times, trying to provide value to you. One idea we had, obviously, we've been talking a lot internally here at STN. We've had a ton of brainstorm calls, strategy sessions with our clients, and I wanted to get my folks here on the line to really, speak to what's happening on the front lines. I mean, when we talk about, Ben, Theresa, our director of client services, we have Dina, our director of production, and Liz, our director of data and strategy, just like me, but probably even more so. They're talking with our clients, they're doing these different strategy sessions, and they understand what's going on. So I wanted to have them come in and all of them bring their unique perspective during these times and provide some value to the audience. So I'm excited for that. This is officially episode 55, which I think what is a 55? Junior Seau was a 55, I believe.
Yeah, I got a few 55s here. Some strong candidates. NBA, we got Dikembe Mutombo, Quentin Richardson, and Jordan Crawford. We also have
Quentin Richardson was not 55.
According to this, he was. Oh, never mind. He was on the trending pages. I got fooled by an ad. He's number 5. He had only one 5, not 2. A couple other good ones: Oral Hershiser, Junior Seau, San Diego legend, and Otis Wilson. And I feel like Dikembe and Junior are the.
Yeah, I want to go
Junior because of our San Diego roots. However, I think during this whole COVID-19 times, we need some Dikembe Mutombo type medicine to, wag their finger at this whole thing and block it out of existence. So I'll use that as a somewhat odd metaphor, but hopefully it lands here on the Business Social podcast. All right, episode 55. Once again, rather than reach outward, we're reaching inward here at STN and bringing in some of my talented and smart folks to share their knowledge, their innovation, their creativity with you, the listeners. All right, so I guess we're calling this the panel. I feel like Bill Maher a little bit here, as I'm going to bring the esteemed guest, I guess, here from STN. We got some directors at a lot of levels here at the company that have been knee-deep into this entire situation, so I'm excited to bring you all aboard. I guess I'll start with Ben. Ben, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Hey, yeah, so I am a director of client services here at STN. I oversee lots of our sports clients, some TV shows, and other things as well. Before joining STN, I spent time really in sports TV. I was with the NFL Network for a while, Fox Sports, as well as some other places. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Theresa, break it down for us.
My name is Theresa LeBlanc, and I'm also one of the directors of client services here at STN. My team, like Ben's, we work primarily on projects in both the entertainment and sports properties, really working on a lot of the network side of things. Before I joined STN, I spent the first portion of my career working on digital and marketing strategy for Dunkin' Donuts, living and breathing coffee.
That's all right. Dina, you're next.
Hey, I'm Dina Neufeld. I am the director of production. So basically we oversee anything that we're creating original content in-house. So that can be anything from a set build to original content series for social, where we do product shoots, to a fully fledged live stream with hosts in different sections. So kind of a wide range of projects that we touch. And before STN, I was at WME-IMG as a director for digital strategy, and then also did some consultant work with brands such as Disney Parks and Disney Plus.
Awesome. And last but not least, Liz joins us from Florida, just miles away from where Joe Exotic got locked up. So Liz, with that note, feel free to take us away.
Yes, very true. My name is Liz. I am the Director of Data and Strategy here at STN Digital. I oversee all reporting, all analytics, and also the paid media sector of our marketing agency. Prior to STN, I have been on the agency side for over 8 years, working with a ton of brands across verticals, mostly working in paid social.
Beautiful. Well, thanks so much. I wanted to add some context to the audience with all the amazing knowledge you guys can drop. So I want to kick things off with kind of an open discussion. And Ben, I'll probably start with you. And the reason I wanted to have you guys on as well is, you guys have had just tons and tons of client calls over the last couple of weeks since this entire coronavirus epidemic has happened. So I'm excited to get your thoughts and we can talk just how the industry is dealing with this. So my first question, and Ben, I'll let you start, is where do you think the current pulse is right now as an industry, as we talk about media, sports, entertainment, the people that are listening to this podcast? Where would you assess the current pulse?
Yeah, I think it's really been interesting to see and to follow. I think it's kind of come through in waves where, at first it was kind of like the shock of it all. Like, this is actually something that's happening. Now, how do I get my brand, my team to speak to what's happening in an authentic way and not be out of character or anything like that for our audience? So that was kind of the first wave. The second one was, well, we need to keep producing content. And with so many of these companies, they're kind of at a standstill with all these sporting events canceled, productions for TV shows being put on hold, on hiatus, and things like that. So it's, how do we pivot our strategy, our game plan, our content according to that? And now I think we've kind of started to reach like the third wave, which is more so, how do we capitalize on the moment? What can we do that maybe we hadn't been thinking about in the past? How can we be creative and stand out from the crowd of all these people trying to have a new online presence, be unique? So that's kind of the way we're in now, and seeing some like innovative and cool things that I'm sure we'll talk about later on. And we'll see if there's another wave coming after this. But it's just interesting to be following and seeing what's happening.
Yeah, and Theresa, I've kind of seen this where, especially when this whole thing started, there was like two roads, right? Like maybe some brands that were somewhat paralyzed and like, let's just hold tight and figure out what the heck is going on. Let's not post anything. Let's stay dark for a while. While the others, day one, were like, hey, let's hop on brainstorm and strategy calls to see how we can be innovative during this time and how we can provide value to our audience. So what have you seen on your side?
Yeah, I think that's a great call out. I think in general, like the pace of social and digital has just changed, right? And I think like brands, like you said, they're approaching it in one or two ways. I think some people are like, okay, let's roll up our sleeves, let's crank, let's figure out how to tackle this new problem. And then there are other brands that maybe are taking a moment. I think the most important thing right now is voice and your almost stance on what's happening. So I do think there's benefit in both approaches. If you really do know your voice, you have a clear branding, you like have this identity that's already locked in, I think diving into it head first is a great approach. I think if you're not quite sure of that brand identity yet, taking that time, really mapping it out is also beneficial as well.
And Dina, we've seen a lot of change, and rightfully so, right? Like, you're so used to being on site with a team of 25, with a bunch of cameramen and audio techs and engineers, and doing live streams and activations and things like that. But now it's gone to all digital. So people are trying to find a way, like, how do we pull out those same type of, how do we eventize this, but from a purely from our apartment type scenario?
For sure. And I think ultimately, quoting Jurassic Park, life finds a way, right? Like, there is all the
Jurassic Park.
Talk
Whoa, wow.
Yeah, talk show hosts have all kind of moved into that space. This weekend, the iHeart on Fox, basically Elton John hosted a whole concert series from his living room. So it's been really interesting, I think, to see ways of almost getting this more authentic view, which I think is what is really making it kind of people draw into it. So talent is letting us into their homes in like a very personal way that we haven't really seen before. I know that the Jimmy Fallon show, his daughters are creating his graphics and things like that. So I think it's, although it's not necessarily the traditional polished look, it's almost offering a totally like unique value to it with really seeing kind of talent in this like unique and personal way.
And just adding onto that quickly is these are things that we've pitched for our clients to do forever is, get direct access on social media from the talent, and people will respond well. So you're seeing people react, and with things like that, with some of the DJ sets, you're seeing tons of people watching these Instagram lives and all these kinds of activations. So it's been really interesting that these things we've been talking about forever, now it's being kind of forced into the atmosphere, and a lot of it is working really well.
Yeah, and I think I've shared this, and I think I shared it on the last podcast with Blake Lawrence, but I really think this is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. I mean, obviously, we all know how important social and digital is, and we all know that we were going to be historically correct on this thing. But now a lot of executives and some of these old heads, no offense, that maybe looked at us or looked at these different departments as the ugly stepchild. Well, now, I mean, I'm talking to my friends in the industry and our clients. I mean, nobody is busier right now than the director of digital, the CMO, the director of social, because everybody, sales, PR, ownership, executives, they're all coming to him and saying, hey, let's do something fun. Hey, we need to do a make good for an advertiser or a sponsor. Can we make additional inventory on social media? I mean, so the coronavirus epidemic may be an interesting place for media, where this is what finally woke everybody up. And now going forward, there'll be people that really respect the platform that is digital. Liz, I want to go to you from a paid media standpoint. A lot of people are pulling back their marketing budgets, but there's obviously a lot of people at home, and food deliveries and e-commerce is still a thing. So from what you've, observed or researched, and just based on your background, like, what is your best recommendation of what's going on currently with the climate?
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at everything kind of as a whole, I think I always put myself in the shoes of the consumer. So what are people needing right now? Obviously, for some brands, that means changing what they're selling. Some brands, that means pausing, as we talked about. And some brands, this is a time to capitalize. As everyone said, everyone's eyes are on digital. Everyone's on their phones. Everyone's bored. And I think that this is a great time to start selling, especially for brands that have been doing a really good job of this, of looking at things like loungewear, for example. That's something that everyone needs. I've seen a lot of brands kind of hop on that trend, because looking at advertising things that may not be as essential, that would be a good place to pull back on. And I also think this is a great opportunity in terms of costs in media to kind of own and incentivize on. So I think that it just depends on, again, the brand itself, but looking at where we can take advantage of things, I think, is really important.
Yeah, and I think, I bought a office chair at Office Depot yesterday because I can't be sitting on my, dining room table chair. My back and my neck is killing me. So I do think, to your point, there's certain industries that it's not insensitive to advertise to your market right now. I've heard some people on LinkedIn say, how dare anybody do outreach or sales? And I just don't agree with that at all. I think, again, serving your audience and providing value, right now it's probably not best to sell season tickets at an NFL game. It's probably need to hold on that for a second. But those different industries that can help, I think, are good. I want to talk a little bit, and we have our best practices guide that we've been sending out, and we'll make available to everybody online as well. And I can actually share my screen for those of you that are on YouTube. So I'll share this. This is our best practices guide. If you guys can see that. Can you guys see that on your side? Here we go. So I want to talk about strategy for a second. And the way I've kind of broken it down, or we've broken it down as a company, is 3 different buckets. One, I think, the wrong term is capitalize or leverage. It really is serve your audience. And that's so many different things, whether you're a TV network or a sports team or, a celebrity, right? The way I'm really looking at it is, whether it be, I've had clients as well separate it from entertainment, informing, and escapism, right? Like 3 different buckets. Being authentic, I think a lot of people are worried about, being sensitive right now to the climate, which I totally get, but that doesn't mean that you have to be paralyzed to the situation. And I think as long as you're genuine, your audience is going to respect that. And then, get creative. Like, we have to be innovative during these times. So, Theresa, I'll throw it to you. Like, anything else on the strategy side? I know you mentioned voice, which kind of goes into be authentic, but anything from like a brand level standpoint that you're noticing or that you would recommend?
I think you nailed it. I think, again, if the audience is there, you almost have to pivot to your specific group that you're looking at. So if, again, your voice has always been this inspirational hub, don't change that. Really remain like authentic and remain who you are, because that's what your audience goes to your account for. And then, yeah, with the creative, I think this is a really interesting time. I think this is going to change the pace of creative for the next indefinite period of time. But I think definitely know that your audience might be a little bit more forgiving right now. You can test some things out. You can try to push the limits. You're going to a platform maybe you've never used before. Just with the goal to learn and see what your audience will respond to and what could actually benefit them.
And I'll even give an example for our company, right? Like, we've had our kind of voice on social and we've tried to provide value as much as possible, but we saw a huge need for, and we created the quarantine and chill guide, right? Like, easy workouts from home and healthy recipes and mindful meditation apps and things like that. And we've got some great feedback from our clients and our followers that thank you so much for putting that together. But that's how we felt that we can serve our audience during this time. And it's going to be a little bit different for everybody. But Dina, I want to also speak on what you and I have talked about a lot is like, people aren't judging you right now. You can have a live stream that's a little bit blurry. I'm watching SportsCenter daily. Ben, I'm sure you watch Scott Van Pelt, but he's FaceTiming people in from their kitchens and it's kind of blurry and the audio is not perfect, but we're all just kind of, we want new, fresh content. So we're not going to judge anybody, but maybe at the end of this, we won't need $100 million SportsCenter studio and people will get used to more of that. But I guess in these times, Dina, you would probably agree that it's okay if your live stream doesn't look like the Grammys.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think though the thing though is that because there is so many brands going live, is just really making sure that there is value, and the reason you're going live is not just to go live. So finding ways to make sure that there is value there, and then also choosing the right platform for it. So there's obviously so many different like options now, but like also just kind of tapping into what those KPIs are for kind of like your reasonings behind everything to make sure you're kind of connecting the dots with all that.
What are some of the things that come to mind for you? And I'll go back to stop sharing my screen. That you would recommend anybody that wants to dive into live streaming for the first time? I think one thing that I notice is people just don't understand the amount of pre-production that is needed, especially if you're working with talent. But anything that comes to mind in terms of like your top 3 things, like if you're going to jump into the live stream world, like what you need to be prepared for to have a successful stream?
Yeah, I think the first one is just really kind of like almost doing an outline of what exactly you're going to go through on your live stream. You don't want to just get there and start rambling. So it's not something like, I think, again, it is more raw and authentic. So we want it to feel that it's not a fully scripted experience. However, I think, people are watching, and again, there's so many options right now when you go on live. Like any given moment that I go onto Instagram, there's 2 to 3 brands that I know that are live. So just making sure that like when you are going, that there is purpose to what you're doing. And then I think, to be honest, still like, even though it's like, we're not looking for the top production quality, just making sure that you have like good lighting and a good setup, strong internet connection. I think those are just like very simple best practices that can make it feel a little bit more authentic. I think people are very forgiving in this time, but I think it's still very important to kind of keep those best practices.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Ben.
Just a couple things with that. I think one is you guys are exactly right. Like it's a great time to experiment. Our audience is a little bit more forgiving, but that said, I do think it's important to learn from your first trial or two, because if things continue to be a little bit lower production, a little bit sloppier, you may start losing your audience after that. But 2 is also basically Dina hit the nail on the head. Like content is king. It's what we say. It's like our motto. But like if you have an interview with Leonardo DiCaprio and it looks like it's shot from like a camera from the 1940s, I'm still going to be all in because the content is so strong. But if you have a 4K video of how to toast a bagel, it's just not interesting. The audience isn't there.
I disagree.
Yeah. But I think that if you do have like exactly what Dina said, like a purpose for going live or for what the content is, there will be an audience for it. So don't just do it to do it, but have a purpose for each.
Yeah. And I'll peel back the curtain about some of our processes. We have a client that we're going to be helping do a lot of talent interviews with celebrities. But, I think Thursday, Dina, I'm going to be the sample celebrity. We're going to do a lot of rehearsals with IG Live, and we're creating how-to how-tos for the celebrities and cards and just a lot of pre-production. So I think that's the one thing that I would say is make sure that you're going through rehearsals, you're pre-producing, you're ready for it's like a live production. I think a lot of people get live streaming wrong, but you're really producing it the same way you would produce a linear production, with that same type of thoughtfulness and rehearsals and things like that. I want to kind of open this up to the group, so I won't call on you individually. Who's doing it right? I mean, we see some good news with our boy John Krasinski from The Office, John Legend and Chrissy Teigen doing a little piano concert. Of course, DJ D Nice is blowing up. I think he got like 600,000 followers in like a day after that. But I'll open it up to the group. Who are some different brands, or what have you guys seen that have just been really innovative during this time?
Yeah, I think for me, I've seen Netflix do a lot. And obviously right now they have the advantage. They're doing a great job on Instagram. They're capitalizing. I know that word is thrown around a lot, but obviously with the popularity of binge watching right now and the popularity of something like Tiger King, they're just absolutely jumping on that and going with it. And I've just seen fans really react well. It's very organic. It's not trying to sell anything. And they've always done such a good job of actually promoting their shows. So I think they're doing a really awesome job, especially now when all eyes are really on them.
I think for me, I was really focused on the Olympics, really excited for that coming up this year. I know, unfortunately, it has been postponed, but like this coming up, I've been following Team USA. And I think in general, despite this unfortunate news, like they've remained pretty celebratory, looking into like their archives. They did a campaign, I think it was like the Shot in the Movement, where they pulled iconic moments throughout history and helped their fans kind of relive those moments. And even though it might not happen this year, and I think in addition to that, they do also have another campaign focused around their athletes washing their hands. So again, just like as kind of a seamless way to do this Q&A style interview, but they do tie in COVID-19 and what's going on there and really trying to make that positive impact with their access to athletes.
Yeah. Similarly to the Olympics, I would say the MLB and a lot of the baseball teams, where they're true to their voice, as we were saying before. They're posting their content, but also opening day comes and you have to speak to it. It's not the elephant in the room. Like, mention it and tell the fans like you feel like they do, while being true to yourself. But another one that comes to mind is just all these musical artists that are, I had 2 concert tickets in this time that have already come and gone, and it's sad. And I was looking forward to them, but them doing like a little half-hour concert in their living room, like it does make up for it a little bit, if not actually being there yourself.
Yeah, Beatport did like a 24-hour live stream. I believe they did it on YouTube, and it was just really amazing. I think they pulled it off seamlessly. They had all these DJs kind of go back and forth, and it was just nice to have that constant always on. So they did a really good job. And I think it was a little bit different than like kind of what we've seen with these small IG live. We're live for an hour because it was so long. That kind of, I think, drew more viewers in, overall.
I think too, like I really enjoyed seeing how some of the brands are activating some of the charitable and philanthropic arms of their divisions. And like, for example, one that comes to mind is New Balance. They didn't do a lot of posting around the event, but they have done like a very subtle kind of post of them switching their production over to producing masks. So I think something like that, where it's maybe like a brand that doesn't really have an arm in the conversation, but still doing a really good job of almost developing that like that kind of like emotional connection to the brand in this time. And I think it's a really important time for people. I think consumers right now are just wanting to like be comforted in some way. And so any of these brands that are kind of like reaching out, I think it's going to develop these strong connections like later down the line as well.
Yeah, and 2 other ones that I just want to quickly shout out are a Twitter account, Lights Camera Pod, who's like a Barstool offset, who I know we've been talking a lot about live streaming and things like that, but just in terms of content that they're creating with graphics and creating conversation, they were #1 trending for like 24 hours because they made a fun, interactive, like little game, like what movie are you, based on, different factors. That did really well. And then also, I know like The Ringer just put out a bracket of the best TV characters of all time, and it's stirring up tons of conversation throughout social media, and they're putting it cross-platform as well on their website, which is, these are lower lifts. These are just good ideas that are creating conversation authentic to their audience And you don't necessarily need a live stream and things like that, but good strategy that they've implemented there.
And
And then-
on that note, Ben, I think anything that people can talk about themselves, I think does pretty well on social. I think we've seen that trend for a while. So any way people can really interact and voice their opinion, which brands have done for so long, I think is a win-win.
Well, and then what you've seen too is like with Disney Plus and Frozen 2. I like to personally take all credit for ESPN releasing their Chicago Bulls documentary early. I think it's April 17th now. I spoke it into existence, but a lot of these TV networks now pushing up release dates because why not? We're all sitting here and we all want content. I think that, and also the idea of this appointment view content. And I think that's so important right now because we were all so excited for the Coachellas and the live sporting events and, you know, the Tonight Show or whatever that may be. And all those like appointment view content things are now gone essentially. And I think if we can look forward to, I've been kind of saying it a lot recently, if we can look forward to a Friday game night with one of our favorite celebrities, or we can look forward to an April 17th launch, and every Sunday on ESPN is going to be this, you know, Chicago Bulls documentary. I think that's going to be important for all of us to kind of get through what will be stir craziness of this whole work from home thing. Ben, I wanted to throw back to your MLB example, you know, just shouting out Tyler Hoffberger and our client, the Baltimore Orioles. Talk us through how that project worked. We worked with them on an opening day piece, and would love to just let the audience know kind of more granularly how we pulled that off.
Yeah, so we had a weekly strategy meeting with the Orioles, and they brought up to us that...
By the way, they were huge on like, let's get on a call right away. Let's brainstorm. Let's be innovative. How do we attack this?
100%. What means do we have to create content? Can we get a podcast going? All these different things. But one thing that they knew for sure is they wanted to put something out around opening day, post it on the day that opening day would have been, and really like spark the emotion that they thought so many of their fans are feeling. So we worked with them, writing a script out, suggesting who we thought would be good to do the VO, someone that resonated with Baltimore and with their fan base, and then really found footage that also directly corresponded with the VO that really hit home. And then you could see after it got posted, the reaction from the fans, and, you know, a little bit sad, but it was a sad day. Like everyone was looking forward to opening day. A lot of people think it should be a national holiday. But it really hit home. And then a lot of people said like, thanks for posting like this. This is exactly how we feel. So it turned out really well. Yeah. And there's like a little GIF on the left there for the content for now.
Yeah. And I wanted to maybe shift a little bit and to just content that we can look at. So if you're looking at the screen now, you're on YouTube. This idea of content for the now. And I think to your point about being genuine to the audience of like, here's what we're going through. Obviously Baltimore Oriole fans were super not pumped that opening day was not happening. However, how can you speak to that? How can you give them entertaining content that can kind of, you know, hopefully get them excited about there will be light at the end of the tunnel. This too shall pass. But I want to, if Theresa, maybe you could take the next one. We have some great custom content ideas in our best practices guide too that anybody can have access to. And I have it there on the screen here. This idea of nostalgia, and then also making sure you're looking at your archive and what's on the cutting room floor and how you can repurpose content has been something that we've been really big on lately.
If you don't mind, Theresa, just before you dive into this, I think it's
Ben's taking over.
I know. I think it's important to also differentiate, because we did hit on that first example. Like there's a time and place to speak about, you know, the whole situation, COVID, everything that's happening right now. But I don't think you should go out of your way unnecessarily to do it. So Theresa, these ideas are like things to post on social, on digital that work well, but don't necessarily speak to like all the sadness and things that are happening in real world.
Yeah, I think to me, like this slide is really the escapism kind of strategy that David spoke to, right? Like nostalgia here with this 8-bit style. It really is almost like that. emotional feeling you get when you look at something you maybe saw, 10, 20 years ago and tying it into a brand. I think, again, to Ben's point, like the messaging really has to make sense. You don't want to come off tone deaf, but I think that's just a great way to kind of have people relive like their younger lives through content. And then in the archive, right, like this example here was done by SpongeBob, but I think it almost looks behind the scenes. And then again, it just leverages access to footage that other brands might not have access to. So again, it gives you almost like an alternative look at something you may have seen before. And again, just is that escapism, gives you that form of entertainment.
Yeah, and then I want to throw it to, if I can not share my screen anymore. Let's see if I can do this. Stop share. Here we go. I want to throw it to Liz too, because the reason we bring up those two ideas is now more than ever, you don't have live games going on. So you can't lean on your highlights. You can't lean on a funny post-game interview. You can't get behind the scenes of the guy walking from the plane to the arena in a dope, outfit, right? So you've lost 90% of your go-to content. So now you have to be super creative on like, all right, how can we really, publish to our channels or schedule content for our different platforms? Because Liz, you've noticed too, looking at the analytics, that from a sports team standpoint anyway, that followers are obviously down because they don't have that go-to content right now during the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think just a trend that I've seen in the past month, sports teams, leagues, any sort of sports media or publication, we've kind of noticed that there's stagnant follower growth. And I don't think that's necessarily an indicator of poor social performance at all. Obviously, I think one of the things that comes to mind looking at this is that even though sports are communities, and especially within looking at sports as a community within social, I think people right now are hurting, and that's the truth. And that, when they're following these accounts, or they may want to follow these accounts, it makes them sad a little bit, as we kind of talked about. And that's why, as the example with the Orioles video, we wanted to really stay true to what was going on. And they did such a great example with that. It actually was the number 2 overperforming post for Facebook out of all MLB teams during opening day. So kind of looking at that as an example, knowing your fans, like we had said, are hurting. Also kind of preparing yourself for those analytics to come through where you're seeing stagnant follower growth, or maybe your performance isn't what it was last year, looking at year over year. Now that's not necessarily a bad sign. It comes with the times. And I think that that's just something that we have to all kind of look forward to as this continues.
Dina, I'll throw it to you because, like I said, if you're a rock and roll radio station and you can no longer play rock and roll music, that's pretty tough, obviously. So I think from a sports standpoint, if you can't share highlights, game stats, player interviews, you're in a tough spot. But in order to combat against that and at least have a fighting chance, I have the slide here pulled up as well. You've worked in entertainment your entire life, and we've never had this much access to talent in probably the history of media because it's always like, no, they're too busy and they're going to be on a plane and they're going to be on set doing this. And almost all athletes and all celebrities are quarantined as well. So I know we've been big with our clients and you've been big as well. Like, how do you create now these original series with this stay-at-home content, this talent-centered content?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know I kind of go back again to like just making sure that there is a great purpose. Like just because we do have access to talent, let's make sure that there's a real reason for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think too, just again, like being authentic with who people are and really utilizing, like showing sides of their personality. And, I think it's nice in a way to see people so raw right now, and like being able to show kind of their side of it, just to develop that personal relationship. So it's definitely like has huge value. I think it's something that we should take advantage of during this time, but like at the same time, like, making sure that we're doing it the correct way, and making sure that it's not just doing it just because like, oh, so-and-so is bored, like let's throw them something to do.
Yeah. And by the way, like you're not you out there listening, you're not the only one that's thinking about this. If you think about an athlete, and I've heard this from our clients, like they're getting hit up by the team, by Nike, by Gatorade, by NBA, by the television networks that no longer have content, right? We saw Victor Oladipo do a concert on the NBA. We were talking about that, Dina. But yes, it's a good idea because we have access, and these guys and gals are probably more likely to do something than before. But they are getting blown up by everybody in their network as well. I want to kind of speak to our next topic, which Liz on the paid side. Listen, there's no more out of home, not no more, but right now people aren't investing in out of home. There's no in arena, right? There's no conferences, and kind of your traditional marketing has gone away. So a lot of people are coming to us for saying, okay, since this is the only medium that I have right now, how do I enter this space? So for some of those folks that have relied heavily on traditional and now are going into the paid and social amplification, what are kind of your quick tips to make sure that you stay on top of it as you enter this new space for a lot of people?
Yeah, definitely. And I always like to advocate all the advantages of digital. And I think now, as you kind of mentioned in the beginning, I think now the doors are going to open and people are going to see the benefits of using paid digital versus maybe traditional. I think some tips would be definitely to never assume. I think one of the things I've learned, even working in paid social for so long and knowing historical data and understanding trends, is that you need to always test. You'll never know what your audience responds to because their media behaviors change. And especially now, looking at how we look at our page strategy, I mean, that should be completely redone because someone may have liked, this type of style of post before, but now they're changing. And with that change, that makes them change their interactions online. So I think a big tip, never assume, always test. Always kind of start broad and go narrow, kind of look at things at a larger view and then kind of start segmenting down. I think I've seen a lot of places or a lot of examples where people are going really, really small into their audience segments. Just try reaching broader and then figuring out from what you're doing testing wise what works. Again, that goes back to never assuming and always testing.
Well, and you made a great point, and this is organic and paid, but any strategy that you had in place a month ago is completely torn up and you're starting from scratch. And that's important to realize. And, I said this on Twitter a couple of days ago. This is not the year to do April Fool's content. I don't think humans in general need to be scared, need to be, fooled right now. So that's the type of stuff that I would recommend, that what seemed like a fun campaign last year or even a month ago may be tone deaf at this point and just being, I guess, hypercritical of what you're doing in that regard, and just being sensitive to the situation. Well, I know we're coming up on closing here, so I would love to just open it up to the group about looking ahead. We're obviously day by day with our clients and as the industry as a whole. I've said it to you. I know you guys feel the same way. I'm just very fortunate and have a lot of gratitude that we work in an industry that we're able to roll our sleeves up and fight against what's happening right now, right? I mentioned before, if we ran a restaurant or a hotel, you had no chance. You had no ability to pivot or do anything. You were just pretty much out of work immediately. So I'm so fortunate that we're able to pivot and innovate for our clients. But yeah, I'll open up to the team. Like, where do you guys see the focus going? Not only in the coming weeks, but as we get out of this as well, just kind of what this new era brings.
Yeah, I can start. I would say, if I were to give my suggestion for like people in digital social marketing roles, it's just continue to innovate. Like, it's what people are looking for. It's what's going to stand out from the noise. Finding out what's next. What can we do that hasn't been done before? Even though some of these companies might be struggling a little bit, like, you have the power to, bring your brand to the forefront still, interacting with your following, with your fans, in unique ways. So don't back down now. Have these strategy meetings. What can we do to continue to push it and market in a more unique way than maybe we have in the past?
Yeah, I think when looking, I think when looking at analytics, just know with that point of view that things are not going to look the same, and to kind of give yourself almost that forgiveness, especially when looking at dynamic data or like week over week or month over month or year over year. It's not going to be this because media behavior has changed so drastically
on both
in the
sides,
last
right?
month.
Because
So just
social
keep that in mind.
consumption.
Social consumption is up across the board, so you may have a huge spike over the next 4 months, and you won't be able to keep up that trend.
Right, exactly. So just take these times as an outlier when kind of looking at comparative data, I would say.
Yeah. I think going along with Liz said about like behaviors changing, I think this is a beautiful time to be this positive community for your followers. I think we know things are going to be constantly changing, but how do you like really tap into their needs? How are you that positive resource? How is your voice coming through, which we've talked about before? But I think, again, trusting the behavior is going to change of each of your fans, but like you can evolve with them. We're all evolving during this time. I think it's just a beautiful opportunity to grow together.
And kind of like, I know we touched on it a little bit too, but I'm just kind of hoping that this trend of live streaming stays and people, network execs and all sorts.
Keep Dina's department busy. What's she saying?
But I think, you know, I've been such a proponent of live streaming for a number of years now, and like I think this is kind of giving its chance in the spotlight. So I'm hoping that we'll see that trend to continue on past this.
I think the punchline or the bottom line here is not too much has changed in terms of you're always going to be genuine to your audience. I think it's always better to be authentic and honest with your audience. If you're a sports team and you're on a 19-game losing streak, you probably shouldn't focus on the fact that you went on a 7-0 run in the third quarter but still lost by 29. So I've always pledged, like, you're going to be genuine. I think the medium has changed almost. Like this entire global pandemic, it's almost like the transition from radio to TV or TV to cable TV. You know, content, to Ben's point, was always king, or great content always rises to the top. But now we just have different mediums that we're executing, right? So more live streaming, more selfie style talent videos, more so than what we had before. So it's the same macro, I think, vision or ethos, but just a different way we're communicating with our audience right now. And I will say, like, man, now's the time to launch the podcast. Now's the time to launch your TikTok, to take your YouTube more seriously. If you can, you know, use this time now to kind of build that really strong foundation, when we get on the other side of this, the brand awareness, and I think the appreciation and almost your audience being indebted to you for helping them through this time is really going to put you in a beautiful place at the very end. Any final thoughts from anybody, or shall we just wrap it? They say no. All right. So thank you so much to Dina, Liz, Theresa, and Ben from my team. You know, we've been talking, I can't even say around the office. We've been talking on Zoom and on Google Hangouts about all these different things. And a lot of this stuff we talked about is in our full best practices guide that I think we just got a lot of good feedback from it. I think it'll provide a lot of value to our listeners as well. So we'll make sure that we link that out to you guys, and you guys have access to that. If you can't find it, it's on my personal Twitter, LinkedIn, STN Digital Twitter, LinkedIn, all those different things. So Dina, Liz, Theresa, Ben, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
All right, Producer Will, obviously you're friends and colleagues at STN. I know you big fans of those folks. I'm sure you got some value out of it.
Yeah, I think, and it's also just kind of nice to see everybody in one room again. We've all been kind of home for a couple weeks now, so it's good to have everyone back together.
Yeah, and I think, like I mentioned, you know, they're on the ground lines, if that makes sense, on a daily basis with all of our clients, and understands the current pulse of the industry. So I thought it was nice for all of us to talk about that, about best practices. But what it really comes down to, which is funny, is if you watch the I guess how that conversation went, it really went back to what we talked about months and months ago, which is be genuine, be authentic, speak to your audience, be classy and not off tone. All those things still apply. But again, kind of like I mentioned, which I think is important, the mediums have changed a little bit, right? Like since we don't have in-arena at a home, we're leaning more into live streaming and more, selfie style athlete content and gaming and things like that, as some of these other environments like theatrical releases and, in-person upfronts and things like that for different networks are not possible. So we're definitely going more virtual more than we ever have. So rather than have like a slow transition from in-person to virtual, it's been just like, all right, yesterday was in person, tomorrow is 100% strictly virtual, which that's why I think a lot of people will stumble out of the gates a little bit, but that's the biggest change for us as an industry.
Yeah, and you look at like movie theaters, for example, they've always been hesitant to do the streaming stuff, and it sounds like you have no choice. You're going to figure out a way to stream it, or
video
you won't.
on demand. Yeah,
and I think
exactly.
there's a lot of good examples that everyone on the panel brought up of different things like that have been worked out in the last 2 weeks of, hey, we have to adjust and we have to grow, or things aren't going to work out for us.
Yeah, so continue to be innovative, continue to strategize during this time. We are here with you. We're all in this together, as we like to say, and we're always here to help. So yeah, the best practices guide, you can get it on stndigital.com. You can get it on my LinkedIn and also Twitter, David J. Brickley. There's links to that. I'll pin it to the top of my Twitter right now, so those of you that are listening can get it faster. So
yeah, thank you so
much. Also,
much.
the STN accounts. It's all over our STN accounts.
Yeah, so you know what? Just do that. Go to @STN Digital across Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, etc., and you'll be able to get those best practices guide. A lot of the stuff we talked about and shared on the video portion of the podcast. So, all right. Well, thank you so much to my team, Dina, Theresa, Liz, Ben, of course, producer Will. Again, we'll thank Furker for all his support, both emotionally, mentally, physically, all those different things. This has been another edition, episode 55 of the Business Social Podcast, powered by STN Digital.